In a world where two short-term rental bros come together.
What?
Not in that way, bro. There's a podcast of truly epic proportions where we talk about all things short-term rental and shoot the shit along the way. Welcome to the Co-Host Bros Podcast. Here are your hosts, Matt Codd and Austin Spitz.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Co-Host Bros Podcast. My name is Matt Codd, and I'm here with my buddy Austin Spitz. And today's show is sponsored by, I'm just kidding, we have a special guest today, Aaron Kirkham with Comingo Vacation Rentals. How you doing, Aaron?
Oh, what? Doing good.
Did I say that right?
You nailed it. Right on.
Oof.
Practice makes
That was
perfect.
close. Oof.
Got it.
What's new with you, Austin?
Oh, not too much, man. Just going through it. Ready to pick Aaron's brain to figure out how I can get out of the weeds and build this big business empire that Aaron's built over the last few years. So that's about it for me, man.
Yeah, let's talk about it. First, let's talk about how big the empire is before we go back to how you started the empire.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're big enough for where we're at, so it's not like we're huge or anything, but we manage about 100 homes. We own the ship in 2 boutique hotels, manage a lodge in Alaska. Also, my wife and I kind of focus, because we have a team and stuff, we also focus on acquiring some long-term rentals for diversification, buy and holds. Primarily we're located in northern Utah, so Salt Lake City, Park City area. We have some places down south in southern Utah, St. George, Kinamp, Utah is where our hotel is. And then Island Park, Idaho, which is right outside of Yellowstone on the Idaho side. A lot of lake life there. And then the lodge in Alaska with a motel in southeastern Idaho that we also own and manage. So
That's awesome, man.
Plenty of heartache and plenty of failure along the way.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So for our listeners, tell us, how did you get started in the space and scale to where you're at now? Not necessarily how did you scale, but I guess my question more is what got you into the short-term rental space?
Yeah. My wife and I, right after college and got married, I moved to Mexico with my wife. And we worked down there for about a year and a half. Our oldest son was born down there, and I was working in marketing with the cruise lines and some retail locations down in Cozumel, Mexico. And it kind of opened us up to the hospitality game. And when we came back to the United States, we managed a 50-unit complex as the live-in managers, because our goal was we wanted to live for free. That was our goal, because if we figured we do that, then we can use the money for, other things, investment, whatever it is. So like everybody, we bought a home. We were going to move into that home, but we realized rent in the apartment complex was going up. So we just ran it as a long-term rental, that first home. And so then when a few months later, we bought a second home, and it was a little bit bigger. And we moved in upstairs, turned the mother-in-law apartment into a traditional long-term. And then there was just this extra space that was a terrible studio, so to speak. I mean, bed on bricks, just brown carpet, brown walls, ugly. I was like, let's try that whole Airbnb gig thing. I expected to make $250, and we made $400 in the first month, $800 the second, and $1,200 the third. And I said, there's clearly something to this. So I kicked my brother-in-law out, ran that one as a short-term rental, kicked my long-term tenants out, and we ran that one. And then from there, it was just conversations like this, of just talking to people, just being open with our numbers. And from there, people said, well, can you manage for us? And we figured that we could do it. And so we got into it and played the game.
So you're 100% family business, you and your wife and some VAs, or what's your staff look like?
Yeah, we have staff in Idaho, Utah, and then Argentina and Bolivia. We've got some great team members. We've had a long roundabout relationship with external team members on the virtual assistant side. Plenty of failure in that, and we could dig into some great suggestions on how people could find success finding good, capable team members that way. But yeah, we have about 8 employees, kind of a 50-50 split, U.S. based and externally based. from marketing, operations is the heavy part of it. We have full-time staff members. And then we also do work campers, which are basically individuals who live at the complexes that we have, who are an extension of the team, but there's a rent trade out and things like depending on the circumstance and what manager capacities they're doing for us.
That's awesome, man. Like the thing that comes to mind, like the first question that I think about, because I'm heavily centralized in one specific area, we own and manage in that area. So the first question that comes to my mind is like, what are your thoughts on being in multiple markets? Like, do you think that it's more advantageous from like a property manager's perspective to be centralized in one area and be like that guy there, but also you've obviously duplicated success in multiple markets. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, are you happy being in multiple markets, or do you wish you were heavily kind of consolidated to one area?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a double-edged sword. Probably for transparency, 2 years ago, we were managing 180 cleaning contracts. Probably can hear my little one knocking there, can you?
Hey, let me in.
Little kid, as
That's
always.
great.
But we were managing 180 cleaning contracts, and we were managing 90 homes, and we're very successfully failing at all of it. Clearly, my secretary needs my attention. Let me grab my little kid and let him say hi in the podcast here, because that's life.
Oh yeah, bring him in.
Everybody works on remote podcasts.
Hey,
Bring
first
him
timer.
in.
We got a little one on the podcast. First timer.
Yeah, we have another special guest, Mini Kirkham. He's going to get him right now. I'm just gonna make sure that the audio listeners have something to hear my sexy, sexy voice. Maybe a little giggle. So, I guess he can't make up his mind. So, if you're not watching this on video, he's got the little kid problem. Really, the problem you give indecisive kids.
Oh man. Well, there you go. There's life for everybody. You try to be a professional and you find out your kids live with you, and so whatever,
It's all right. We're not professional.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that's why we're doing this, is for family and stuff. And but stepping back, from a numbers perspective, a couple of years ago, we had the number, and my goal was to be a somebody, and clearly to be a somebody, you need a big number like 100 properties. And by thus so doing, I just about lost my family because I was working 6-7 days a week. Not just in the day, but like also at night, because our processes weren't in place. And so I would literally from 7 to 11 most days be cleaning up after my cleaners who had failed because we didn't have effective processes in place. We didn't have good softwares. And actually at the time, with all those contracts, we were in 6 different markets, granted more centralized to the Western states, and really successfully failing and bleeding money everywhere. And so really what we did to facilitate, to kind of answer your question, is we cut everything and focused on one spot. And by focusing on one spot, which was Northern Utah, we got better processes in place. We hired better people. And by thus focusing on those processes and just being solid and actually good at what we're doing, we cut all of the cleaning contracts. We cut 50% of our portfolio from the management side. And within 6 months, we had I wouldn't say double, but we were making hand over fist in comparison when we had all the cleaning contracts, when we had all the other all of the other management side, because we were actually good at what we were doing. And we even for a long time said we won't take people outside of that reach until opportunities came up, which said, hey, we have this boutique hotel that's in Southern Utah. Is that something of interest? And our team, we had built the processes enough that we said, yeah, like that makes sense. Let's just roll that into what we have. And so then we had a new location, and then another opportunity, and then Alaska. And so, like, probably answering your question, I think really if you stick in and where you're at and just jam and just become awesome and become the local hero where you're at, opportunities of those same people will then say, hey, like, do you manage in these other places? And then as you analyze it, you can say, yeah, let's jump in, or no thanks, whatever it is, as you're comfortable, because you know your processes. But if you're chasing the number and just chasing to be in other places because it's cool and that's what people on Facebook are doing, it's going to be a great way to fail. Now, not everybody does it that way. That's just me. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. So like your nugget is that like the first thing you should do initially is be the best person in your market first, and the opportunities will follow suit after that if you are interested in getting into a second market based on the relationship that you've built in your original market, right?
Yeah.
So what like it, it's crazy to me like the size of your portfolio. It's awesome. So like what was the biggest thing that was the bottleneck, or like what was something that was the hardest thing to kind of offload from like an operational perspective, whether it be guest messaging, pricing, whatever, to where you were like, hey, like I'm getting in my own way. I need to hire out this specific thing. What was it that got you, that you think that maybe got you to the next level?
Quitting. Uh, I know that sounds so counter. So I was the biggest problem in my business because I was so much in the business rather than on the business. My wife and I, yet again, we kind of hit this crossroads on things. And I legitimately, this was such a head case, and things would happen in the company. And I would express things not in the kindest manner to team members and stuff. And people were scared to be around me. So I quit. My literally what happened, my wife paid a bill that I didn't want her to pay because of reasons which are now in hindsight so stupid. So I literally said, fine, I quit. And we had just bought another house as a long term, and I stepped away from the company and I flipped the other house. That's what I did the whole time for 3 months, kind of took a hiatus. And then when I came back into things, my team members had to learn, and so they then took ownership, took control of things. And I said, oh, this is how we do it. Like, okay, but since you've been gone, this is the new process and this is that. And it really helped the team. So probably answering your question though, besides the fact of, stepping out of your business, and there's huge concept of working in your business versus working on your business. And that's probably the hardest distinction, I think, when people are, you're a one-man show or, and growing in your business. And then when you hit a point of scale of hiring the next person, VA, whatever it is being able to work on it rather than in it. And that's a real challenge. But probably the other aspect of it too is just having solid written out process and softwares or a tech stack of where truth is held. For us, we identified a source of truth and we use Breezeway is what we use. I joke all the time that it saved my marriage, but in a lot of ways, it really facilitates because you take the information out, and we follow the concept of if any one of my team members is dropped into a property, physically or virtually, they should be able to find all the information they need in our source of truth, which is Breezeway. And that's videos, that's photos, that's serial IDs. And so in part of our onboarding, that's what we do is we take videos of everything. We do all so that really team member who doesn't live in the United States or who will never visit that property has, if they're critical thinking, they can go into our source of truth, dig into it and say, oh, this is where the breaker box is. And per the second picture, it's the third one down from the left is the one that should be tripped. Guest, please flip that one and the power will get back on.
So you fired yourself. That's what it is. You fired yourself.
Yep.
That's awesome. I need to do that.
Yeah, you do. I have a lot of questions, so I'm going to start. So I'm going to go back to your processes. So you figured out at some point that something's got to give. Like it's just you're heading toward disaster. What or how did you come up with processes that you needed to do to grow the way you did? Like, did you get help? Did you join a group? Did you read some books? Like, what did you do to be able to figure out the processes that you needed? Because it sounds like to me you're a stubborn motherfucker, and you were just stubborn at the time, right? Just based on what you're saying, like you're stubborn, and I get it because it's like some people just put their head down and just continue to work. And I think Austin's similar that way as well. Just continue to just look forward. You just have tunnel vision. And you're just like, no, this is the way it has to be when there could be 15 other ways to do something that's better. So talk about a little bit how you implemented these processes and how you came up with the processes or whatever the case may be. So that people can understand kind of how they can implement a process in their business, like so Austin can quit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. So one thing we did hire a consultant who It was a friend and a mentor who helped me get into the space. Actually, when I was deciding if I wanted to get into property management, I reached out to 3 property managers and said, can I job shadow you for the day? I just want to know if this is what I want to do. I have my own Airbnbs, but I want to know if I can manage for other people. 2 of them, they all said yes. One said it'd be $250 for the day. The other one said it'd be $500. And then my last one, Sarah Brown, with Outbrace Vacation Rentals in Park City. She said, I'd love the help. Come, let's go party. And I drove her around. We went to all these properties and she taught me her own process, and it really opened me up. And so I reached out to her as a mentor and said, hey, I know you do consulting. Can you just, with my wife and I, like help us look at things and just, and so I think that that's one thing too, is just acknowledging that there are other ways of doing it. And though it works for your team, have somebody else look at it, because they will say, well, why are you doing this? And you either have to prove the validity of it, which is helpful, or prove the stupidity of it, and confirm that you need to change it. So I think that that's one thing that we did, and I recommend that to anybody. It's just outside perspective helps a ton, in whatever iteration. And then as far as like the creation of processes and stuff, I mean, we still are daily doing it. And really it just comes down to, okay, and we just try to identify trends. We follow something called the rule of 3, which is if there's 3 complaints or 3 instances where the same thing is occurring, or we're in passing on the same barrier, be it an employee, that we've tried things different ways, and every time we get the same result, which is in a couple months we're frustrated because they're not doing the tasks or whatever. We say, okay, this is the 3rd time, clearly there's a problem. Or a guest says that if you have 3 different guests that say the same thing, then it's a problem you need to address. And so identifying what it is and then saying, okay, let's work back from the problem and find what the real problem is. Guests are complaining about this. Is it really that it's this, or the fact that we're not doing an effective job communicating that this is a duplex? And so people say it's noisy in this neighborhood, when the reality is they don't understand that it's a duplex, and they hear the person next door, as the example. Not that that's exactly, but I think a lot of it is just identifying, okay, there's a trend, something consistently is happening, but what is the true root cause, more than what the obvious one, which is, it's loud in the neighborhood. Well, I can't control my neighborhood, but I can control these things, and sending expectation messages or whatever it is, so that you can build into what the true root cause is, more than the superficial result or feedback that you're getting.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we do something similar in the the corporate world I'm in. So it's like sometimes things happen that you really can't control. So the saying is, control what you can touch. And if it's not in your control, it's not in your control. So that's what we say: control what you can touch. So I want to dig even more into your processes, because you probably have this more locked up than anybody that we've talked to. Besides, a couple people we've talked to about the same amount of properties. So I want to kind of go back to your process with your video walkthrough, your pictures of the breaker, that kind of thing. I want you to give me like a breakdown, that if I were to okay, Aaron, I want your company to come and manage my property, and you got to go to my property and you got to go do the walkthrough for your day. So that way you can get all your documentation. Give me a walkthrough of what that is like, because I think that's going to help people with their process, because it's like, okay, I'm going to do a discovery doc. I'm not even thinking about extra pictures and things like that. So I want to know, from your standpoint, of what you would do if you were to, come walk through my property, to be able to take it over.
Sure. Stepping back, specific to answer the question, I mean, one thing that we focus a lot on is guest avatar, of who is it that we actually want to be booking this place, and what amenities and what communication that we need to focus on them so that they actually book the place. We take that same approach on our houses, as who are the people that are going to be coming into this house, or who are going to touch it, and what information that they need. So clearly there's guests. So first you walk through with the concept of okay, I'm a guest, I'm on vacation, I'm a smart person, but I'm on vacation, so I'm an idiot. So what is something that I'm not going to get? Okay, there's 2 shower knobs on this. We just had this last week. We have one shower in a master bedroom where there's the one that comes out the wall and then one that comes out the roof, and you do a different shower. They felt as though it was broken, when in reality is they're internationally based. They've never seen it or know how to use it. So they think it's broken, when in reality it's just the fact that you twist a different knob because it's a different mechanism, and they're not familiar with that.
And you do
So-
a video on that for your guests?
We do a video on that concept, so that when they ask and this is that specific one I just mentioned, that's a hole in our process. And we just learned that last week. Is they said we don't know how to use it. They called Airbnb, they wanted a full refund, all that stuff. And we're like, okay, like before we get to that, like you totally might be valid. Can you just walk us through and send us a video? To which they did it, and they're like, oh, never mind. So like clearly there's an aspect though that we didn't have that specific video ready. So that's one thing that we'll do. You'll walk through the property and think, okay, I'm a guest. Here's a fireplace. Let me do a little 10-second video of a fireplace so that I can show somebody to turn it on when they don't get it. And we just upload them to our YouTube account and then identify the property. And then from there, we take that link and then we put it inside our source of truth at Breezeway. So the whole concept of when somebody asks, we can say, oh, here's a video, boom. And then it's a troubleshooting mechanism of, is it truly broken versus the person user error, so that we don't have to waste money in sending someone out to show them how to turn on the knob, so to speak. So that's one approach, is walking through it that way. The second is, okay, we're going to send contractors, be them cleaner, be them anything else. So we do a full video of the property, so that when a contractor who's never been there before, we can say, go to minute 1 in this YouTube video. You'll see that's the door we want you to go in. Watch it until minute 2. You'll see it at the end of minute 2. That is the washer that we're referring to. And that's how you get down to it. Like, I know most of the time it's really obvious, but sometimes just people are dumb and or, unobservant. And so having that video for contractors helps them, as well as, okay, where are the tools, or where are the storage of this? Where is the lock of the closet? And where's that associated key? Where's our backup key for when that key gets lost? And we have another lockbox on the exterior that's a master set that we don't give to anybody, but it's a master set for when people lose keys, because people always lose keys. So that's another one that we do. Same with cleaners. Like, okay, what does a cleaner need to know? And really, we just try to work through each of those specific avatars of what information would they need if they were never here. Now that I propose that, like, we're doing a really good job. There are some of our properties that we onboarded early. Like last week, I uploaded a bunch of breaker box stuff on a specific home because I was there, and it wasn't there because, we took a picture of the breaker box, but I took one up close that shows which room it is and stuff. Because the more information that you have in the appropriate places, our team members, be them local, far away, they can go into that source of truth, grab the information that the guest needs, and avoid extra charges of sending, unnecessary maintenance people out, and or get the guest the information they need on how to turn it on because they're being a doink and don't know how to turn it on.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. Like, dude, that's the hardest part about this industry. Like, we can all do, dynamic pricing. We all got the messaging. We can all run a profitable property, but it's like the hardest thing is like those little things, those little headaches that come up when we're managing a property, and every single unit or house is different. They all have different ways to do things. And man, dude, that's like, I admire that, because that's a headache. And I think from like a scalability perspective, based off of what you guys do, I know for a fact the bigger managers don't do any of that shit. Like Vacasa doesn't do anything like that. Like, so the fact that you have that in place already separates you as a manager, because, I know that they don't do that. But man,
Well,
like
it's time
that's
intensive
the hard
too.
part about managing.
And really, it's a very much like an insurance, adjuster and agent. Like, they are looking at all possibilities of all the things that could go wrong, and that takes time and effort. And realizing that really is that big of a deal that we have the breaker boxes uploaded, because really we could say find the breaker box guest, but for what our business is, like, we want our guests to know that we know the property and we can help them, as opposed to like, sorry, the power's out, go figure it out. I mean, some people interpret that, even though you might use all of the great customer service techniques, so to speak, they're going to interpret. They didn't help me fix the power when it turned off, as opposed to it's downstairs. Here's a photo of it. This is the box. Not that we do it all to that great detail, but the concept is if we need it, it's there for those events. And I would provide better service overall.
Yeah, and I think about that too, because like in our contract, like certain things like amenities, like we do the best of our ability to maintain those, amenities. But in our contract, it's like this is your grill, this is your hot tub. We're not necessarily liable for your stuff, but we do take extra measures to make sure that they're maintained, and then we want to make sure that we have the right people in places that like, hey, like, are your grills getting cleaned every month? Like not necessarily every month or every quarter or whatever the case may be, scraping off the residue so a fire doesn't start. So now in our contract, it says we're not liable for that anyways, but we want to go above and beyond and be like, hey, like here's the SOP on how our cleaning guy cleans this, even though, per se, we're not liable for that, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Well, because even regardless of what contracts, owners still expect you to do that because that's part of the experience, the way they're hiring.
Exactly.
I mean, and it's still appropriate to have the liability clauses because yes, same with us, we're not responsible for damage that happens at the property, but in a way, like inadvertently we are, because we let that guest in and they did it. And sometimes it's easier for us to bite the bullet on stuff and say, yeah, like we'll pay for a new washer because, was it the owner's fault? In a way, was it the guest's fault? In a way, was it ours? In a way, but like at the end of the day, we'd rather maintain a good relationship because relationships and real estate coincide so directly that really for us, and I know this is probably another key to our own success, is we decided we wanted to work with people that we wanted to work with and with homes that we wanted to. And so our vetting process of new clients, not that it's like super strenuous, but more than anything, we're meeting people at the property so that we can get to know the property to find the obvious problems at the beginning. And two, get to know the owner, because like if we have a good relationship in the beginning and are open on it, then we can continue. And one of my favorite things, one of my grandpa always said is just because a first date goes bad doesn't mean it's going to get any better. That same concept of like, if you meet someone, you're like, you leave it and you're like, well, that guy's a doink and that guy's a jerk. Like, what happens when things hit the fan and he's pointing the finger at you? Well, he's going to treat you even worse because you just met and he treated you like garbage. So he's going to continue to treat you like garbage. Not that it always happens, but it's a lot easier to work with people that you want to work with.
Absolutely. So what's the best way to kind of, no, let me ask this. So for your business in a way, like what are the ways that you kind of vet owners and properties, or do you have like property specs? Like one thing that I'm running into in my business is an issue of like, I'm very centralized in my market and leads are coming to me organically. I'm saying no to 80% plus of the properties because with my team, it's just not, it doesn't make business sense. So like, how do you determine what are the specs on the property? Like you don't have to say your specific specs, but how do you determine if it's a property that you specifically want to take on?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it is some of those key indicators of what, it doesn't make business sense. Like I can take on a studio apartment and, can I make it successful? Sure. But would I prefer to have a 4-bedroom, 6-bedroom, 7-bedroom home that the ADR is going to be triple double? Like, yeah, like same amount of effort, but profit is way higher. So there's a real aspect of that. I think the other part of it too, another indicator is if my team is capable. Because we brought on a bigger project this summer, I was still getting leads and still wanting to onboard people. It's my business. I want to grow all that stuff. And my team said, we can't, like, please stop for the summer. We need you to stop. And listening to them, because if we sign all these people up and then they have bad experiences because it took us so long to onboard them, then it's kind of contrary to, it's the same with guests. If guests show up and they have a bad experience within the first 10 minutes, then you're fighting for a 4-star at the end of it. Same thing with owners, that if they, if it took so long to onboard, that's actually what happened with us with the software Guesty. It took Guesty 6 months for them to get us onboarding. And by that time, this is terrible. We went through 3 agents. We went through all these things because they had this huge growth. And we said, please let us out of the contract because you haven't fulfilled. And they did, and found a better solution that within a month had us onboarded. So, it's kind of that same concept. And I think the other part of it too, not that like I have to be friends with all my owners and our team members that way, but like we do need to have an aspect of respect. We had, and a lot of it is based off our pre-experience. We had this one home, amazing home, all of those shiny, amazing things, mansion, hot tub.
Hey everybody, this is Matt from the Co-Host Bros podcast. I recently came back from a mastermind trip and I spent a lot of time talking about taxes with Ryan Bakke. So Ryan normally took on clients that had 10 plus listings. Well, he created a brand new program where he's going to take on people between 1 and 10 listings for a lot cheaper at a small business owner price. It's going to include on-demand support, monthly calls, and tax prep. They're going to do little coaching calls monthly, things like that, to help you save as much money as possible on your taxes in the future, including on this year. Ryan has helped thousands of people save money, investors especially, and you really don't want to sleep on this because I think the price will go up at some point. You're going to save far more money than you spend. If you're really interested in changing CPAs and finding something better, go ahead and click the link that I posted for you inside the show notes. Now we're going back to the show.
Cool thing. And he would call us at late nights and just rip us new ones. But because he was a flagship and it was this beautiful property, we put up with it. And there were times where we would say, like, clearly you're not going to communicate because you're yelling at me. Call me when you're not mad. Hang up. And then he'd call back later and said, yes, you're right. It was mom, But like, even putting ourselves in that circumstance, regardless of the money, it's not going to be worth it because it is going to end because he's frustrated. Maybe not because of the hot tub, but because really he just disagrees with how we're doing it and he needs to do it of his own because we're not a good fit in the beginning. And so I think that's another aspect is really knowing. And another thing too that I always say is we're really transparent and honest with people. If the project's going to make success or not, because I would rather be honest and lose a deal now because just because this deal doesn't work out doesn't mean that the next one won't. And I'd rather have credibility of being honest with you. It's not going to work on this 2-bedroom place or this whatever, because potentially if they're a real estate investor in 2-3 years, they'll remember the conversation and say, I have this amazing ranch that is this huge project. I'm going to give you a piece of the equity if you manage it and help because I was so impressed with you way back when.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I went through something similar like that yesterday. He wanted me to manage this property he was going to buy. And I was like, you shouldn't buy that property. You're not going to make any money. You're going to be coming out of pocket. Anyway, that was sidetracked. So at this point, what are you doing for like damage protection to insure the properties? Are you insuring the properties? Are you going with somebody like Proper? Are you self-insuring? Like, I think that's something too at scale is like, okay, well, how do I not bother the owner, but I got to replace a towel or whatever, and I don't need to put in an air cover claim and waste my time or whatever the case may be. So what are you doing at this point?
Yeah, great question. We, from like a home insurance standpoint, we present the options. Steadily is one that we use. Proper is another one, and also talk to your present homeowners and agent and make sure that you have an appropriate policy for this home. So that's, and really it's a disclaimer of you are the owner responsible. But this is what we recommend because of when it happens. I mean, I have had our that first house that we had. It totally flooded, $40,000 of damage from an Airbnb guest that broke it. We got it all covered through Airbnb and through homeowners insurance, but because we prepared things right, we were able to not only redo the whole basement, but the kitchen, and 2 bathrooms upstairs and a master bedroom. So like what of the damage that was attributed was 30% of the house, and we were able to renovate close to 70% of the house because we prepared well. So that's one aspect of it. The second is from the incidental standpoint. We used to use another company that we've departed from just because they've kind of had a shift, but now we use Safely from the incidental side. We've been really impressed with them as well. In combination with Subject to the Home, we've also prepared kind of a self-insured model where they're still following the same concept where guests are paying into a fund that builds up so that then when damages happen, we can pull from it internally. And we kind of are doing the hybrid model because there's some homes that they're legit and we want to make sure that they're covered appropriately. And so having a real insurance policy in place for incidentals and things like that is appropriate. But then also having a backup fund, so to speak, when things are needed or happen so that we can make things right. As well as probably the other part of it is we've become really good at the air cover claims, and not that we do everything from the incidental standpoint, but like really knowing the systems, really digging in, having good contacts to follow up on when things go bad, so that we can get paid out not only by that, but sometimes by insurance as well. A huge home run ones that we had. I'll only say this just because it's not like it happens all the time this way. We had somebody hit a home with a vehicle. That sounds terrible.
Shit.
They
Yeah.
nudged it. They just popped it, and the wall, it was kind of a built-in basement. The wall, millimeters, nothing, like no real damage. However, we were able through incidental insurance to get about $3,000 in coverage. We from homeowners $3,000, and then from an air cover about $3,000. And so overall of a repair that was, he found a good contractor that he felt good, comfortable with within the price range that he wanted. He made like $9,000 off of damage, because that's what insurance is for. And it's not like it's fraud or anything. You're just following the policies that you have and the platforms that you have. And we actually love damage in ways. I know it sounds terrible, but we love when it happens because we're dialed in on a lot of it. We don't win all of them, as we're probably a 85% win rate on some of the air cover stuff. But like big stuff, if it's above $800, like we feel super comfortable that we'll get it covered.
So I too have had bad experience with some of a provider that said that they promise guest insurance. And I think that the experience that I had was I was paying them every month a lot of money, and everything that I submitted to them was guest damage that would continuously get declined. So what I decided to do was kind of self-insure. And I don't know if that's specifically you had mentioned it, if that's what you guys do, but I've started to do that, and I kind of just do like a self-insured deal where it's in it's in the agreement where up to $1,500 worth of incidental. So like the basic guest damage package,
Yeah.
it's X amount per booking. We collect it, and that's what I do. From like a self-insure perspective. And I've liked that a lot better because then it's kind of biased because I'm the property manager, but I'm also the decision maker on what gets paid out.
Yeah.
But I'm also like paying out more than what the actual insurance company would have paid out. So it's like I'm more of like giving to be like, okay, I get that. Like if that was just my house, but I'm also the decision maker. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I guess it's a gray area. You know what I mean?
No, it's killer. I think it's great. And I mean, we do an iteration of that. The balance of it is just the coverage level. I mean, and that's why we still do a hybrid model of some true traditional insurance stuff, because we have some homes that, regardless of what I took from guests, I would not want to cover it just because of how expensive
Bad
it
it
would be
was.
for me and my company. Not that they're big damages, but like we have some great homes that are that I can buy with my whole life. So with that being said, I want to make sure that they're protected by somebody who's a little bit more nuanced in the insurance game than I am.
So you have an
Freaking
additional
Park City.
policy. Yeah, so if you have like one of those houses that maybe $1 million plus houses, you go outside of your self-insured policy to have some other additional guest insurance. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking at houses over there, 10, 12 million.
I mean, we don't have anything that big from the,
Oh,
but
that's
I mean, under 3 million. Yeah, we have a number of homes that way, which is really cool from that perspective. But at the same rate, like we just want to make sure they're protected because we can't, fix the. I mean, some of them have some of those crazy imported type of whatever granites, and I don't want to have to foot the bill to have it refurbished in the authentic method of the Italian painter who came out and all that jazz.
Yeah. The Mexican
it's a hard,
style.
yeah, it's a hard call. It's not necessarily a hard call to make, but I guess it's just like property specific, right? Like you don't want a complete tank to do like a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, but if you have this big old thing, like this big old mansion that you're managing, you want it to be like the appropriate amount, like, okay, if something bad happens here, like at least I have something additional, but also the money that I'm making from this property also offsets that. So it's not that big of a deal, right? So
Yeah,
like I can afford to
which is
pay
true.
some kind of additional insurance. I can afford to pay it because I also am making a lot of money off this property. So at
Correct.
that point, it makes sense. It's like the lower revenue properties. It's like, I'm not like whatever, get regular guest
Yeah,
insurance.
and that's, I mean, on our own progression, I mean, that's kind of what it's been. I mean, just like us, just like most people, I mean, you start with what you can get. If it has 3 walls and most of the roof, you want to get into this game, you'll manage it. I mean, that's how I think all of us in an iteration started. And just as we've grown, and I think it's just the nature of it, you get a little bit more under your belt, you understand, and then you get bigger homes that are bigger, better, badder, all that type of stuff. And it's just the process. And I don't think that if anybody's listening to this, it's not like it's unattainable. I think that if that's the niche that you focus on from the luxury side, you'll totally crush it. But just be aware that we all will make some mistakes, and it just takes time for you to dial in exactly what your niche is, so that once you're dialed in, then those additional opportunities will come. And because that's the hardest thing. I chase opportunities sometimes, and that's what I think led to our failure. Is I wanted this, I wanted that. I listened to a podcast and heard the one guy who was like, "Oh yeah, we do double insurance." I was like, "Let's do double insurance." When in reality, it's like, maybe you should just focus on getting good cleaners, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
that,
makes
that
sense.
balance is just be good at what you're doing, and the opportunities come. And that's really the bigger stuff that's come to us. It's because we've done a really good job on what we've had in the micro stuff that then it goes into bigger projects.
Maybe quality check a cleaner.
Yeah.
That's great. Sorry, I wrote my question down and I forgot what it was. Speaking of cleaners, so I know that you're like heavily saturated in Utah. I realized that you invited me to your Facebook group the other day and stuff. So are any cleaners that are working for you at this point W-2, or are you paying them some kind of like monthly stipend or salary, or are you still just straight, pay per task at this point?
We have tried both in a lot of different iterations. We have one that's a full time, that's on W-2, I guess you could say. They're more of a facilitator more than and a backup when things hit the fan, and a maintenance warehouse. Get all of the sheets put together. But majority of it is we just have really good relationships with contractors, and we just focus on. Probably the biggest thing that I've found is that, one, we're always connecting with more cleaners, because I found that the contractor training is kind of a 2-year lifespan, that they get in, they're new to it, they hustle, they do well, they grow, and then kind of at that point, they don't follow in on all the processes themselves, and then they start to dip off. And so we're always connected, as well as like we're really vocal in communicating things and have good relationships that way, because it's not that we're complaining, but the more that you can have good communication, have a good relationship, they're going to want to continue to work for you, and you we work with lots of great people, and I don't think we've always been a good fit for other cleaning companies too, because of what we require.
Awesome. So I've got a question for you. So the way your business is structured, are you like true property management structured where you collect funds and you own the listing, right?
Correct.
So what are your thoughts on like somebody that's building out a co-hosting brand? So if they're, the listing's in the owner's name, the owner collects the funds and then reimbursed at the end of the month. Do you have any opinion on that? Like, I'm curious to what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just depends on how they build their business and the metrics that they put in place to ensure. The reason we switched is because we got stiff $3,500 from an owner, and he wouldn't pay, and all the money went to him, and it was his listing, and then he kicked us off, and we were out. And so after that, that was one aspect of it, and two, like the individual claims that you had to do on everybody's account of going in and out. And from a scalability standpoint, it gets challenging, that if you want to go over 20 properties, so to speak, like that's a lot of accounts that you got to log into, because it's their accounts, and it's not just Airbnb. I mean, depending on your co-hosting, in my opinion, most co-hosting are just Airbnb focused and occasional VRBO. But in our age, like you have to do more than just those single channels. And so for scalability, you have to have it on multiple channels. And there's also a huge advantage, and this is probably the biggest thing of why we've done it rather than co-host, is if I have a problem at property A and I have to shift the guest, I can shift them to property B at the click of a button from a property management, compared to they have to cancel. I hope that they rebook. And we noticed a huge drop off on that concept. Is that probably I don't remember the data exactly, but like a 50-50 that they would cancel and then they never rebook at my second property, even though I was offering discounts and whatever, because I had failed at that, and they elected to move on and find something else.
Yeah, I think that's the way that I started my business, and I'm just like,
And
I feel like I'm at a point now where it's like I'm too far in the weeds to like pivot to transition into like a true property management structure. So I don't know. I feel like I talk to property managers like you that have the traditional structure, and there's sometimes when I talk to them, they're like, "Damn, yeah." From like an accounting perspective, like I wish I didn't have to deal with this shit,
yeah,
the accounts receivables and stuff like that. And then there's also times when I explain to them, and they're like, "Yeah." Like you said, having multiple accounts, like I'm dealing with one now where we made the account. I have access to the account. They don't have access to get the guest messaging is another thing too. Like obviously you have all of that consolidated to you. Like trying to please two parties is impossible, especially when the owner has access to guest messaging. And then you have a guest and then you have to play middleman. Dude, that
yeah.
shit is like, I wouldn't do this. So I have
That
it
is
to
actually the
where
reason why we changed, is because of that, because we were losing in both ways. Guest, hey, the hot tub's dirty. 30 seconds later, the owner's like, why is the hot tub dirty? Me to the owner, I don't know. I just saw this. We even created a contract, an extended piece of it, which was called Code of Ethics between owners and managers, that they had to give us an hour per our contract to reach out to us before they saw issues. Just
it's not even
because
worth it, dude.
it's so hard, and yet they still did, because it's their place and they're invested. The other thing now, years later, removed from that I'll say that why we also have shifted is the sellability of my company now, like to make it so that I can truly, because if I was going to, Austin says I want to sell, if I look at it, I'm going to say, well, that we have to put in a reduction of the fee, or we have to put in a staggered process of, if this percentage of people drop off because you, Austin, are no longer the manager, and I, the stranger, am coming in and ruining the business. If it is below this threshold of 60% people, or we want to maintain 80, and if it goes below that, I will do a reduction of what I was actually going to pay, because the portfolio isn't what it was promised. That from that side of it, it's harder. Not to say it's impossible. Like we've had some conversations with people that buying a co-hosting business, but it is also an aspect of, it's new, and like there is going to be drop off, but selling it is a little bit more challenged because it's not your asset. It is someone else's, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Like for my thing, like every new property we put on, like I structure it the co-hosting way, and they own the listing. And I tell them in our contract, hey, if you fire me, all the reviews I get, everything goes with you. You own the listing. But there's a Google Voice number in play. There's no access to their account, and it's in the contract saying like, hey, like you don't. There's no owner communication, or you don't get to look at anything, because it's part of the contract, and it makes my job 10 times harder than it needs to be when you have to answer to two parties. But I don't know, like looking at it now, it's just like I think that I probably should have set it up the other way. The reason I didn't is just because of like maybe potential future legislation, and some things like perhaps, oh well, you need like a broker's license to do this, and I guess I got scared out of doing it that way. And then I also like the accounting aspect of it, to where I'm like, dude, like you get with your CPA, I'll print the documents out and send it to you, and that's all you need to do. I don't have to do this trust accounting. And I don't know, man. I talk to people both ways, and I'm still on the fence. But it's like when you explain it your way, like at that scale, like it makes sense to just be like.
And I think a lot of it too, yet again, it comes to your exit strategy, like whatever your plan is for your exit strategy. And if your exit strategy is grow and you're going to do it for the next 10 years, like awesome. Like then you'll develop loyal people. And then the moment that, you've been managing their home for 5 years saying, hey, we're shifting our business, we need to take it. Like they love you so much and the service that they're going to say, all right, cool, whatever. I think there's an aspect of that because, but it just depends on how you're planning on exiting. And for us, when we hit the wall on our company and stuff, and like with my wife and everything that way, so what I did is I said, I want to sell the company, because that was just, I wanted to start fresh. And so I went to a conference to find a buyer. Actually, it was in Miami, for my business. And I had talked, just like you talk to people, and I had realized that, like, if I was lucky, I'd get, for where the business was at the time, $300,000, like crazy lucky. And I said, that is so disheartening for me, because that is half of the value of my house in Utah. That is the average house in Utah. I put 3 years of my life into this company, and it's worth half of what my house is. Whereas we had another property that we had flipped, and it was worth way more than that. And so after going to the conference, met great people, realized I was, experiencing many of the same things that other people do, which is just hard, in scaling a business. You don't know what you don't know. And then from there, we shifted it and said, okay, we got to build our business so that when the right number comes, or if the opportunity comes, we're prepared with appropriate accounting practices, with trust accounting, with, owner by owner statements. And, we could walk away and say, here are the associated assets and here's the employees. We're not perfect. I talk a big game that way. And on this, it's not like, we're ready for that. We're still a long ways, but the conference really motivated us so that there is an exit strategy for building a business. And it's more than just a cash flow aspect, but it becomes an asset that can be sold. That was our approach. Not to say you're right or wrong. I still think that a co-hosting business can facilitate that in a lot of ways. That's just the route that we chose.
Yeah, I think that's something that I need to revisit now. Like, even in the younger stages of like this business, I make enough money to supplement my lifestyle, but considering the long-term play, like what is the 5 year, what is the 10 year? And from a scalability perspective of like 20 listing, let's say I'm at 10 now, right? So when I get to 20, like, how many Google Voice numbers do I need? How many owner account numbers do I need? And are those contracts sellable when I'm ready to exit? And that's where you don't know what you don't know, because I did what I did and I started it, but now I'm getting to the point where it's like, okay, maybe it's time to potentially revisit it over the next year if I need to structure into into a traditional property management structure, which I have built a real business, but build like a real sellable business. So it's a very good nuggets to think about, because I'm there, like, where everything is co-hosted, and I built all the owners accounts, but like, did I build their owners accounts or did I build a real business? That's the question.
Yeah, exactly.
This is really good. I mean, I'm surprised it's been 50 minutes already. And I said that comment and forgot what I was going to ask, but that was really good. I think that was very informative to help everybody. Oh, I was going to ask, so is there a special requirement in Utah for you to run it that way? Do you need a broker's license or vacation rental management license or some requirements?
No, technically no. From a licensure standpoint, it's helpful to have a property management perspective, but it's also a gray area depending on where the OTA or where the booking is received. Because technically, if someone, it comes down to long-term property management. I mean, if you're doing 30 days plus, which many of us do midterm, but depending on where the reservation is reserved, really the merchant of record could be Airbnb versus actually me or our company being it. And it's a gray area to which, from a state legislative perspective and property management, they don't care. It's not that it's a problem, because we're also in a state where vacation rental companies have been around for an extended time frame, and just because the Airbnb stuff is a newer iteration of it, it's not to the degree that its merits change. More the legislation is in regards to city bans and stuff like that compared to who can manage them.
So on your Airbnb profile, or let's just say, are you operating under your business name or are you operating under your personal name?
We have a few, and it depends on the home asset and what type of guest avatar that we're trying to reach. For like units that are basement dwellers, I call them basement dwellers because it's the aspect of it's a basement or it's a small place. We have a team member who is the face of it, though we have a guest communications team that facilitates it, because we have found people are a lot more forgiving to a person than they are a property management company. And if you're showing up to someone's basement and it is Comingo Vacation Rentals, and you're like, this is a dump for a vacation management company, they just ream you on stuff compared to Jessica is your host. They're like, oh, thanks, Jessica, for helping me. On some of our nicer homes that are vacation focused and all that, it's by our company. And then we also, we did this a while ago. We've kind of retired it, but we actually had a burner account, is what we called it. But it was for properties that we brought on, and they were good owners and stuff, but like they were garbage places. That just caused problems with how they were built or flipped, yet they were still finding profitability. So we had a fictitious person that hosted them, so that when they got shut down because of bad reviews, because people didn't like it, we didn't communicate well, we could relist them on the same account, and it would be fine, and it wouldn't necessarily hinder great property that's worth $3 million because the basement dweller is mad because there's people upstairs.
The undercover account.
So
so are you, by taking it all on yourself and having all the listings under your profile, are you concerned about you getting suspended? I see a lot of people talking about that lately. It seems like, to me, 99% of the time it's their own fucking fault. There is the 1% where people call and make up some bullshit, I see, but are you concerned with that at all?
In a way, always, because I'm always putting my trust in it. So, stepping back, one of the worst employment experiences I ever had, I used to do Amazon management. I would manage Amazon stores. Once we had a product that got shut down, that got the entire account shut down for a week, and we were losing $50,000 a day. And my employer was irate, clearly, with me. To find out what the issue was, is that the UPC code, which was bought from a wholesaler, was registered to 2 sellers away. And so I had to track down the wholesaler, the seller, and the seller, and get documentation to Amazon to say, I bought this legally. And that, $250,000 mistake, because for my channel, that was all I was selling on. And so I was a total failure in that week. Ever since that experience, I've always focused on diversification and not putting all my eggs in one basket. And so we work really hard to not just have Airbnb bookings, but VRBO, Booking.com, the Expedia Group, Marriott Bonvoy. We a lot on direct booking, Facebook marketing, word of mouth. Like, we work really hard so that when one of those platforms says I'm a bad guy for whatever reason, and we do get shut down, because it's just bound to happen for fictitious reasons, or because I am a bad guy for some reason. It's like, total bummer that we lost that, but we still have a high percentage and we can be better on VRBO now. And let's amplify that, or let's do a better job on the Plum, or with the other ones that we put on. Because I'm always trying new platforms, just because nobody else to the same degree. Well, not that others aren't, but like everybody focuses on Airbnb. And it is just a small niche, though it is a big player. Booking.com, our team is crushing it right now. Google Vacations, a lot more than I expected. And I'm glad, because it means I'm not so dependent on just a single platform, but rather multi-channel management and multi-channel bookings.
So does Breezeway cover all that? Not Google Vacation Rentals. If somebody doesn't know how Google Vacation Rentals work, you guys can look it up. But does it cover like all the one-off OTAs that you sign up on and all that stuff? Or
Breezeway is more of the operations side, and so that's kind of the house of that. We use HostAway is our guest management system, and not all of them. No, they do a lot of the big ones. But yet again, it also kind of goes back to each property is a little bit different. And so we don't list all of our properties on all of the platforms, because not all, great example, Marriott Bonvoy, like my basement dweller ones, I'm never going to get approved on Marriott Bonvoy, first off. And two, like, it's not the right people, because those people are going to hate my basement, so to speak. Versus, there's another one, it's called Copa.co, and it is for midterm rental stays. And not very many people list on it. And I love that, because I'm the only one listing on it in my associated market. Granted, if people are listening on it, you're more than welcome to. It's a good, there's plenty to share. But each of our homes is listed on different ones. And based off of the integration or lack thereof, we just develop a process with the team. and analyze it and check the inboxes as needed. So that and kind of goes back to that same concept of we build processes, we find out things that work, and then build processes around it. If it is automated, or if it's not automated, we use ourselves and our team or hire the person capable of helping us so that we can accomplish the utilization.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question because I know we're short on time. But so I recently was hanging out with Justin Ford in Breezeway last week, and I took the Breezeway certification to be safety certified and all that stuff. With as many units as you have, what are you doing to ensure that those units are safe for your guests?
We have received litigation on specific things where our unit wasn't safe. And so we're very familiar with both sides of the process. Really, for us, it is, I mean, it sounds so stupid, but it's just part of our onboarding process of within, Breezeway, for those that don't know, you can create templates. And one of our templates, this is the safety section. And we go through and document it. And the biggest reason, the reason that we've been saved on the associated litigation that we were able to avoid is because in Breezeway, we had documentation of when things were installed, of them working, and we had the documentation to say, so sorry, you experienced what you experienced, but it worked. Here's the evidence that it worked. And, here's the associated reports from the, outside individuals that said it did. So, realizing we can always do better, and I haven't taken their associated course. And there's plenty more ways that we can be. We have just established the stuff that needs to be in it, and we use Breezeway as evidence because it literally saved us substantial money.
Yeah, I feel like they're like, if you need a process on stuff, like go to Breezeway. Yeah. They're pretty. I mean, and that's good that it saved you from some litigation because you're not the first one that they've implemented something that saved them from litigation. So that's pretty amazing. Maybe we'll try to get Justin on here, but so Aaron, man, we might have to do a part 2 if we can get through 3 reschedulings.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. But can you I had to throw it in. Austin knows that's why he's like over there laughing. Can you just tell everybody where we can find you, where they can look you up, hit you up, whatever the case may be. And then, make sure you just DM me or text me everything you got. If you got, links for things, whatever you have,
I'll send you my MySpace link.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love listening to the music that you have on there since 2001. Yeah.
So Aaron Kirkham on Facebook, based in Utah. Ugly mug, but that's who I is. Instagram, you can look me up, AaronBnB.Kirkham. Our company is Stay Comingo. Our hotel is Stay Venture Base in Kanab, Utah. Lower Kenai Lodge up in Alaska. That's probably those basic. Feel free to email me, Aaron@staycomingo.com. CONMIGO, or feel free to give me a call, 801-623-6885. Really law of abundance, and feel free to spam me. Happy to help. I mean, and that's probably another thing of really what's led to a lot of our success is just being really open with people and like law of abundance. And if I can help, I can. If not, I'll direct you to the right person and tell you where to shove it.
Damn, he gave out his phone number. That's crazy. I mean, we're definitely gonna do a part 2 because I want to touch on all those hotels, and I mean that someday my goal is to own a boutique hotel someday. I just like big stuff. I want to own like a 400-unit apartment complex someday too. It's just weird, but I mean, I want to get you back on, touch on that. I think that would be great. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. You guys all subscribe, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Co-Host Bros. If you want to, ask us a question, hit us up, questions@cohostbros.com. If you want to be on the show, you can hit us up at info@cohostbros.com. And then that, we appreciate you guys coming. And thank you again, Aaron. Austin, take us out.
Peace.
Hey, guys. If you could just leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, that would be awesome. Right now, we're running a contest, and we're going to pick winners to get some free Co-Host Bros gear.
all you got to do is leave us a review. Doesn't matter what the review is. It could be a 1-star. It could be a 5-star. Just shoot a snippet of it to info@cohostbros.com. That's info@cohostbros.com. And we would really appreciate it. Thank you all for listening.
The Co-Host Bros Podcast.